Welcome to the Anglotopia podcast, where we explore British travel, history, and culture. I'm your host, Jonathan Thomas. Today's episode is a very personal one for me, and it comes with a big announcement. So, Gold Hill in Shaftesbury, Dorset, is one of the most iconic streets in Britain. You know it even if you don't know it. It's the steep cobbled lane lined with ancient cottages that Ridley Scott used in the 1970s Hovis bread advertisement. It's one of the most beloved and nostalgic television commercials ever made. And you've also seen this street in countless travel guides, photographs. It's everywhere. And so for many people, including me, the image is the very definition of England. And so Gold Hill, though, for me, is a little something more. It's the place I dreamed about going before I ever set foot in Britain. And as a teenager in Indiana, I bought a poster at Hobby Lobby called Gold Hill, Dorset, and hung it on my wall next to my bed and looked at it every single morning and thought, one day I'm going to go there. And when I finally made it on my second trip to Britain with Mrs. Anglotopia, it was one of the happiest moments of my life. And we have been back dozens of times since, staying in the former up-down cottage that was right on the hill in the middle. It's a place that means the world to us. And today, I'm announcing something we've been looking forward to for a very long time. This coming February, Mrs. Anglotopia and I are finally returning to stay on Gold Hill after nearly 10 years away after Updown Cottage went private. We will be staying in Button Cottage, which is right next door. So Button Cottage is a remarkable property in its own right. It's a 400-year cottage sitting right on the cobbles of Gold Hill, and it has been painstakingly and authentically restored by its owner, Melanie Fontana, over 3 years. It's one of those rare places where history isn't just preserved, it's lived in, and it's on Airbnb. So Melanie, welcome to the Anglotopia podcast, and thank you for making our return to Gold Hill so very special.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm
I
looking forward to chatting to you about it.
I have been looking forward to this interview for weeks, and so let's start at the beginning. How did you come to own a cottage on one of the most famous streets in Britain? Was it something you dreamed about, or did it just pop up unexpectedly?
It was love at first sight. It was a complete accident. We, like many British people, thought that the iconic place that's used in the film for the Hovis bread was up north in the north of England. And we were very surprised when we came for a long weekend one Easter, that our host at a B&B mentioned, oh, you might want to go and visit Shaftesbury and see Gold Hill. So we came and our jaws literally dropped when we stood at the top of the hill. It was just a phenomenal view. And there is a cafe at the top of the hill. We came each morning for our 3-day stay, and just sat there and looked in awe at the view and the view of the cottages and the countryside behind them. So that's how we came to own one. My partner got on his phone and Googled to see if there was anything for sale. And this little cottage, the cutest of all the cottages, was for sale. And we went home and got on the phone and booked a viewing, and we just wanted to snap it up right away.
So you guys bought it in 2019, right before the world turned
Yes.
upside down. So what were those early days like as a new property owner in the middle of a pandemic?
Well, we couldn't get to it actually because travel was restricted by the government safety guidance, and so we couldn't come and start work on it, which was really, really sad. When the restrictions released a bit, we began then, and the majority of the initial work was umpteen trips to the rubbish site to dispose of materials that shouldn't be here and general belongings left in the property. So yeah, it was pretty grim actually as a time for everybody, not being able to just come and go as they pleased and do what they wanted to do. So it was very restrictive.
And so as a consequence, the renovation took 3 years. What was your philosophy going into it? In our previous conversations, you've described wanting to use the right materials and the processes for an old building. What does that mean in practice when you're restoring a 400-year-old cottage?
So our philosophy was to recreate as original a cottage as we possibly could, and that meant revealing the original features. There are restrictions that prevent you doing anything else, but really, you have to restore the cottage with original type materials. So that means materials of the time. And we found that it was very much spoiled in the 1970s. There was a real trend in the 1970s in the UK to get rid of fireplaces, to block them up. And clearly, somebody felt they wanted it to just look like a modern house. The ceiling, all the beams were covered, all the woodwork around the window, everything original was covered with modern plasterboard. The walls were plastered with modern plaster, and modern materials were used to paint it. It was actually really, really damp. And that's because it had been tanked with bitumen tar, which means that the natural moisture in the walls can't escape, and the moisture coming up through the floor was prevented from doing that by concrete. So I don't know how much you know about old properties, but actually the old-fashioned building techniques are fantastic, because what they do is they allow a cottage like this to absorb moisture and then release moisture according to the weather patterns. And so it just breathes just like we do. And it needs the flexibility to be allowed to do that. And once you put modern materials like concrete, modern plasterboard, tar, things like that on it, you stop it breathing and you hold that moisture in, and it's got to come out somewhere sometime. So the walls were very damp. So we had a lot of work to do to take all of that stuff away, and that took the best part of 3 years.
Wow. It's interesting to picture that because the cottage is, along with the rest of the street, is iconic as oldie England. And to think that inside that cottage was a 1970s modern drop ceiling, modern plasterboard cottage. That's so funny. And I applaud you guys for taking it back to what is meant to be. And that's something I've watched countless episodes of Grand Designs and various British home improvement shows. So I'm well aware of the challenges that you can face, and I know that doing it authentically has a cost, not just in physical labor and financial costs. It takes so much to put into it, and so I applaud you guys for doing that. And so Button Cottage dates back to late 1500s, and you've described uncovering the building's original features and historical heritage during this restoration because you've stripped all of that 1970s garbage back. What were some of the most exciting or surprising discoveries that you made other than damp and mold?
Well, what was really exciting is the sheer fact that those features were here underneath it all, because you just don't know. You don't know as you peel it back what you're going to find. And to find those beams and to touch them and to know they're approximately 450 years old is just goosebump. They are filled with ancient woodworm holes from centuries ago. And they're just beautiful. And of course, they require a lot of cleaning as well. You don't just pull down a false ceiling and wow, it's already hiding away, ready to come back to life. No, there is a lot of cleaning to do and work to do. So the original wood that we found was really exciting. Um, Upstairs, the original elm floorboards sadly had more floorboards nailed into them. So when someone decided that maybe they weren't good enough anymore, they didn't restore them, they wanted to cover them up, they nailed Victorian floorboards into them, and that unfortunately split them. So we were not able to take up the Victorian floorboards. But what I would like to say is the Victorian floorboards are now very historical in their own right. And we have revealed those. And there are a couple of elm boards that you can see part of just outside the bedroom area. They were completely covered with chipboard because someone had tried to level the floor, to avoid any trips, potential trips. And it's just lovely to walk upstairs and see the elm boards peeping out, and then go into the bedrooms and be on what are Victorian floorboards. So that was a wonderful, wonderful surprise. And I tell you what, the social history, the amount of different wallpaper designs, especially off the front of the fireplace here, that seems to be a real key feature where people wanted to put lots of wallpaper. It goes right from, I don't know, early 50s through to even the 80s. So it's really, we've kept all of them. And one day we hope to make a montage and frame it and put it up like a picture. We haven't done that yet, but anyone is very, very welcome. We'll pass over the folder containing all those snippets of wallpaper. What else is there? There's some wood upstairs where somebody has made a little bit of a gallery wall to stop you sort of stepping out of the bedroom onto the stairs, because that would be very dangerous. There's a little galleried piece, and that the wood there is from would have been from an old market chest. So there's name of suppliers sort of ingrained into it. And we haven't taken anything like that away, because whilst that might not be 450 years old, because let's face it, they wouldn't have had a staircase even back then, it is still part of the cottage history. So I think, to add to your previous question, our philosophy has been to revert it back to its original state as far as possible, but also to keep some of those pathways it's taken over time where they are interesting and where they are the correct materials. And wood is very much a correct material, of course. Oh, can I just say one more thing? A fossil. So when my partner dug up the floor, the concrete floor, he found a fossil. He dug it up by hand with a pickaxe because he didn't want to use any kind of machinery that might damage or disturb whatever lay underneath. And he's settled the fossil into the grouting next to the floor, the limestone floor tiles just in between the living room and kitchen. So it's there for people to see.
Neat. That's lovely. So the name Button Cottage itself has a lovely history. Can you tell us why you guys ended up on that name and what the history is
Yeah,
behind it?
I'd like to say part of that is because it literally is as cute as a button. That's a phrase in the UK, cute as a button. But yeah, historically, Shaftesbury was one of the leading towns in the button making industry. And people who made the buttons were home workers. There was no machinery then, and they literally sat and hand embroidered buttons. And this was mainly the women and children. Um, they all worked. They sat at home making buttons, and that what carried on right until the button industry was very much industrialized in Victorian times when industrialization came. And what that meant, sadly, was that many families emigrated to Australia to find a future because, of course, their work disappeared overnight. So Shaftesbury was very much a leader in the button making industry. And when you visit the art centre and when you visit the museum, you'll be able to see some original examples of those buttons. It was very much the wealthy people that could afford the most decorative buttons. Yes, it was a very working class, very much a workers' area, Shaftesbury, at Gold Hill, particularly, and there would have been markets outside the cottages here, lots of livestock, horses and carts going up and down with goods. All sorts of trades took place here. It was very much the market street of the town.
So that's a good segue into sort of the next topic I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about Gold Hill and Shaftesbury itself. So for listeners who may not know Gold Hill or Shaftesbury, can you paint us a picture of it? What makes the place so special and other than the famous commercial?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So to frame the town, the first thing I would say is it's one of the five highest towns in England, and it's the only significant high town in Dorset. So it's a Saxon town, and it was built originally to fortify the the land, the town as such, and so it's all made from green stone. It is on top of a hill, and it is very well known for its independent shops, unlike very touristy other parts of Dorset, and very souveniry parts of Dorset. Shaftesbury has a more than its fair share of independent shops, and that means artisan crafts, um, homemade handmade candles, pottery, lots of art. It attracts a lot of arty people. They display their art here, and we have a worldwide renowned countryside bookshop. So it's a very interesting place. It's very good for browsing these little shops, talking to the owners. We have a kitchen bookshop, which is so famous. They do lots of author signing events. So that's become very popular far and wide. And yeah, it's a delightful town. So a lot of old buildings are still here, and the stone of the time was greenstone. So predominantly, you're looking at greenstone buildings. We have our own art centre, our own outdoor swimming pool, and it's a very small town, but I'd say it's quite vibrant. What you also may not know about Dorset, if your listeners haven't come here on a holiday, there's quite a lot of quiet time as well, because it's a little bit still kind of old-fashioned in that shops are not open 24/7. Well, we do have a Tesco's that's open till midnight, just about a 10-minute walk away, but typically places shut at 4 or 5, and it goes quite quiet in the evening. Uh, and um, and so it's a really nice space to just walk around and relax. And we walk our little dog. So you do get some quiet times, and then you get lots of buskers at weekends, making we feel that we're on holiday when we go up into the town. It's just got that feel about it. And especially if there's a bit of a breeze being on top of the hill, the sun and the breeze, it just often makes us feel like we're on holiday, and we don't have to pay to go. So, so that's quite nice. But yeah, there's lots of interesting things to see. There are plaques, historical plaques, to define the history, the connection between a person and a place, or a house and a point in time, whereby it will tell you who lived there. So lots of buildings have been lived in by famous people. Um, yeah, it's great for walking. We have fantastic views down, just at the top of the hill. There is a walk, which we call it the promenade, because it would have been a promenade for Victorians to promenade and show themselves off to meet young gentlemen. And that's beautiful because it's just a lovely wide place for people to walk and to admire the view. The view just goes for miles over the Blackmore Vale, and you can see that from the cottage as well. And then from the other side of Shaftesbury, there's another fantastic view over to the north. So we're lucky to have the Blackmore Vale and Cranmore Chase just right by us here, and we can see all of those views. So it's just a delightful market town.
Well, and to pick up on one of the points you made, the quietness of Shaftesbury is one of the things I love the most about it, because you stand on the street in the evening after everything is closed, or early in the morning when you wake up, all you hear is birdsong and silence. And it's a kind of silence I don't get here where I live, even though I live out in the country. I live near a major highway. So like I never have silence. And so that's one of the things I enjoy the most when I'm in Shaftesbury, is it's just so quiet. And even though Gold Hill is world famous and there's lots of visitors even on in the middle of the week, it's it's still very quiet, and it's like you hear something and you're like, what is going on out there? Or someone drives up the hill and you're like, what is going on? And it's just, other than that, it's just quiet. And like you said, there's so much history there. And I like to say that really, Shaftesbury is kind of a microcosm of all of English history. It's been there for most of it, and it's this settlement on this hill that has seen so much. And one of my favorite bits is actually right out the front door of Button Cottage, and that's the Abbey ruin wall, which is a Grade 1 scheduled monument that was built over 600 years ago. And so, what's it like living alongside an ancient monument every day?
It's fascinating. It's truly a beautiful wall, beautiful greenstone and little flowers coming out of it, and it's just so peaceful. So it's a really nice thing to live opposite, and to know that that will always be there because as you say, it has the highest level of protection and conservation. So it will always be there. And these little houses are just kind of built in the, under the impressive status of the wall. Um, it's beautiful. And of course, the Abbey ruins can actually be seen as well in the town. From Park Walk, the promenade I mentioned. You can go in, it's free. You can go in there and you can just sit. You feel a real sense of calm when you go in there as well. And they're quite happy for you to just sit. They welcome people to take in picnics and things as well. But it's just nice to see the ruins, and they have a card for you to take round and read what each ruin represents as a part of the abbey that would have been. It was
Yeah,
expensive, by the way. It was one of the biggest and richest abbeys in the UK.
yeah, it was founded by Alfred the Great, who's considered the founder of what we think of as England. And yeah, the abbey itself dates back to the year 888. That's not 1888, 888. So, you know, 1,300 years ago, this place has been there. And yeah, I highly recommend the Abbey Museum. It's fascinating to learn about life in this abbey and how rich it was, and then what happened to it during the Reformation. Yeah, and how really the ruins of the abbey are the entire town, because they used the stone to build all the iconic buildings. Um, so Gold Hill became famous because of a television commercial directed by the famous director Ridley Scott. He wasn't famous when he made the commercial, but he has since made some of Hollywood's most awesome movies. Um, so how does that legacy of that TV ad affect the town today? And do visitors still come specifically because of the advert? Because I know when I first visited in 2004, you made a point that actually a person who was visiting from elsewhere also made, that everyone thought it was in Yorkshire.
Yeah, it's it's such an iconic place, isn't it? And people do come. We have international visitors. People do come because of the advert. And sometimes, one of the couple will say to me, I hadn't seen it, but my husband showed me on YouTube. So yeah, and we have tourists walking up and down actually humming it, singing it along. Yeah, so it seems to span all ages, even though, of course, younger people don't see it on television now, of course. But once they hear about it, it just seems to be quite, every member of the family seems to be quite enthralled by it. And in terms of how it impacts the town, I'd say the town has got used to it. The town is just very protective of it, but it almost wears it like a comfortable cardigan. The town doesn't do anything special. And one of the really attractive things about the hill is exactly that, because what that means is it hasn't been overdone. It hasn't been presented, in a certain way. It is very much as it is. Nobody's out there polishing cobbles. The cobbles just exist. The cottages just exist. And fortunately, when one is derelict, someone comes along who really cares about the history of Shaftesbury and the history of the cottages and wants to maintain that legacy. And they come along and they do the right thing by the cottage. And so, another generation lives in the cottage and the cottage gets saved. And it kind of it just works by itself. It just almost is self-sustaining.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed over the years, looking at historical pictures of Gold Hill, I've seen them in all eras, including back when it was painted instead of photographed. And one thing that doesn't change is the street doesn't really change. Maybe there was a tree overhanging from the abbey, or the doors are painted slightly different, but the hill is largely the hill. It's a thing that doesn't change. That's one of the things I love about it most of all. So let's talk about the restoration a little bit more. Restoring a listed building, and for my American listeners who don't know what that means, a listed building means that the building is of historical interest and it's on a register with the British government that says this building is important, is of historical value, and any changes to it must adhere to that history. And so because of that, it's notoriously complicated to restore an old building like this. What were the restrictions and requirements that you had to work within? Because I believe you still work with English Heritage to do these things.
Well, yes. I mean, the first thing we did, I think it's fair to say, is to educate ourselves, actually, because, we've done a Victorian property before, a home as it was on Ascot Racecourse, but we have never done or lived in anything this old. And so we wanted to make sure that we were more than just a little bit, advised and informed. So we became members of the listed property owners club, and, read all their publications and looked up certain aspects as we came to them, whether that be furniture in terms of fixtures and fittings type furniture, or materials. So we were quite well versed, and certainly you have to use materials of the time. So lime plaster, which is the old-fashioned plaster that would have had horsehair in it. And different eras would have had slightly different ingredients in that lime plaster. So you need to go to a specialist supplier who is very well versed and knowledgeable in what it would have been like at that time, so that you're using something that is as similar as it possibly can be to the original, um, whatever is left on the wall, whatever you can save. And that's another good point. You should save everything that you can. There is really very little that can't be repaired, and that goes for windows, doors, everything really. It's it you know it's very few things that can't be repaired. Sadly, the floor, as I mentioned earlier, was concrete, so you're allowed to take up everything that should not be there. Just go do it. Heritage people and experts are happy for you to do that, but it must be replaced with materials of the time. And actually, you can't get greenstone for floors now. It is considered too soft a stone to put on floors, and in any case, there aren't any more. The places where you
Quarries.
that's it. There
Yeah.
aren't any more places where you can get green stone from the earth. So, yeah, for all sorts of reasons, it wouldn't have been right to put that on the floor. So what we did was we said, okay, well, we know we need something breathable, and what would what's the pragmatic approach? What would people have done then? Well, of course, they used the closest source of stone, didn't they? They used it from the abbey as it was destroyed by Henry VIII. So what we did was we went into a stone specialist retailer and said, what is our nearest pit where they excavate the stone. And what's the main source of stone in the area, and that's how we were given this particular limestone, recommended this particular limestone that we have on the floor now. Yeah, so lots of restrictions.
Yeah. So, what were some of the biggest challenges you ran into as you began to peel away the layers and restore it?
The biggest challenge by far is bitumen tar. Never go anywhere where there's bitumen tar. It's very difficult. So when the builders in the 1970s would have put in the shower room on the ground floor, they did what all builders did then, which they knew very little at that time about restoring historical buildings. And what they would do is do whatever was in their power to keep any damp at bay by what we call tanking it. And they put bitumen tar on the walls. And that is very, very difficult. Tar is extremely difficult to get off. So that's one of the main challenges, particularly in the bathroom. The bathroom was the most difficult room in the house, by far. And also that that links up to the fireplace. The fireplace was full of tar, but that is tar that is created when you burn wood that's not as dry as it could be. So we provide kiln dried wood for people to burn here. So that has a guaranteed maximum moisture content. It's the lowest moisture wood you can burn, because it's actually the burning of wet wood that creates chimney fires. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners will be in parts of America where they cut down their own wood and they have a special way of seasoning it, making piles around the perimeters and using it in turn. And we go one step further, I think, rather than using seasoned wood, we actually use kiln dried wood. So the stones in the fireplace were absolutely covered in tar, very difficult to get off.
Do you get it off then?
Well, I'm afraid you do have to use chemicals for this particular problem. I didn't take part in that, so I couldn't even tell you exactly what, but it is hard graft and some chemicals, and there's just no other way that I know of um, to remove material like that off your stonework.
Well, while we're talking about fireplaces, tell us about the fireplace behind you. Why is it split in half and what's going on there?
Exactly. So this is one of the key features in the property. At one time, the portion that you see over on the left there would have joined up with this half here where the actual fire is burning at the moment. So it would have been one large Inglenook fireplace. And someone came along in the 70s and actually cut the beams. So where you see the plaster here, and you can see kind of a square piece of wood, that's the end of the beam, and it would have been all one long beam. And they cut the beam in order to install another section, so kind of sectioning it off into two halves, if you like. And they did that because, we imagine, because they wanted to make a smaller place for the fire, and they filled this in until there was just a small gap to put a gas fire. And then the other side of the fireplace was all lined with lots and lots of things like breeze blocks and lots of levels of plaster to make a very small cupboard. And handy as a cupboard would have been, we wanted to get back to the roots of it and what was there behind it. So we had a conservation architect round who explained how it would have been. And we did think about taking out this section of wall, but actually, due to the pandemic, it would have taken, for something like this, you need planning permission, and it would have taken over a year to get that, which held up the whole project. And so, regretfully, we decided to keep the two halves, and actually are really super pleased that we did, because they work so well side by side, and perhaps less overbearing for a small cottage to have those two sections. It gives us a really handy place to store the wood. in one side and to have the actual fire in the other side. And it works really, really well.
So, give us a tour of the cottage. What all is there for people to rent when they stay there?
Sure. So you walk in off the cobbled street, straight into the room I'm sitting in, which is the living room, and you look across at the fire there, and next to the fire, just over to the wall I'm in front of there, you will see a small reclaimed dining table with a couple of chapel chairs. So we have furnished it with furniture that is old or reclaimed and made into something else, like the floorboards in the kitchen are made from reclaimed pine wood. And so this room has, it's very cozy. It has a sofa, a leather chair. You can see the Abbey wall out of the window. It has a deep windowsill. You know, the walls are maybe 18 inches deep, very, very thick, which keeps it cooler than a modern house in the summer. You see all the beams above you. You would walk out of this room into a small vestibule area where you've got the staircase going up and you've got your shower room and toilet on the ground floor. If I step down a couple of steps, I go into what would have been the 1970s extension, but is actually developed from what would have been outhouses initially, perhaps a scullery and a a coal hole. So that extension now is the kitchen. And then if you go outside, there is another room underneath the kitchen, but it's accessed via the outside, and that we keep as a laundry cum storeroom. If you go upstairs, you will come across a very nice main bedroom with a sumptuous old iron bed. I say sumptuous because one of the things we wanted our furnishings to be were, as authentic of the time as possible. So the inside of the sofa is all feather, very, very heavy cushions. And the bed also is goose feather and down, which molds to your body and makes you feel very much hugged. And it's all kind of plumptious to look at. The bedroom has multiple pillows for you to choose what's just right for you. And also to sit up and look at the tourists walk up the hill in the morning while you're sipping your tea or coffee. That's quite a nice pastime to do. So two rooms upstairs. The other one is a small single, and we have done it as a day bed, which is a three-sided bed. It's a full-size 6-foot single bed, but three sides of wrought iron uh, around it as the frame. And we have chosen to put tongue and groove in that small bedroom and in part of the larger room. That creates a very warm feel, and it does help to um, create warmth and give that cottage feel. Uh, so yeah, we have decorated and used wood to clad it where we felt that that would be a good idea. And we've decorated in very soft muted tones because we wanted the cottage to be able to sing. And the color that we have chosen is called pointing, which matches or mirrors the pointing between the stones. We used Farrow Ball Paint, which is a company based in Dorset, so very appropriate. Their paint colours are all heritage. And we've picked neutral tones plus some sort of countryside type colours, so some really soft greens and some soft pinks. And the textures are really important, I think. So rustic, rustic coffee table, handmade by one of the shops in Shaftesbury from reclaimed wood. We have some velvet cushions, some linen cushions, some have fringes on the outside, so very tactile and very authentic materials. a mix of materials, and very soft linens on the bed. And they're made soft by the treatment that they have. Once the cotton is woven, it's woven in a particular way, and then it's treated in a way that makes it really soft, with a nice kind of soft, cozy, used, smooth feel to it. What else can I say? Anything I've missed?
When can I move in?
Well, it does. It does. People tell me it's really relaxing and it feels like it gives you a hug. And when they tell me they didn't wake up till 11 a.m. the next morning and they actually missed meeting up with their friends because they just slept and slept and slept. We spent a lot of money on the furnishings, and I think that's such a big part of the experience to get into a bed that's really comfortable under a duvet that just molds itself around you. Everything is hygienic. I'm really particular about hygiene and cleanliness. So all our beds and pillows, they have two protectors on, two sheets, two of everything, so that you feel you're getting into something really clean. And that's important to me, that everything is clean and smells clean, and you feel that you can embrace everything and touch everything because everything's squeaky clean. And there are bare wood floors upstairs so that you can see the history of the building. However, we have placed rugs, where you get out of bed and in front of the dressing table, to make it feel more cozy and softer and more luxurious underfoot. And we put a stair runner on the stairs after stripping it all, years and years and years of paint on it, stripping it back beautifully. I looked at it and I said, I think we need to soften it a little bit. Let's get a stair runner so you can still see the wood staircase at the edges, but you're walking up, perhaps barefoot, on a carpet.
So I'm 6 feet tall. Am I going to hit my head on anything?
That's a really good point, and I'm glad you raised it because I did mean to bring that up. Because we dug out the concrete floor, we have gained quite a bit of height. So I'm pleased to say that the height of the beams is roughly 6'7". We can't quote for every beam because it's a natural piece of tree, right? So all of them are different thicknesses, and so on and so forth, but roughly 6'7". So someone of 6 foot or a little over 6 foot, would be fine here. In terms of any places that you need to stoop, there is a slight step up as you go from the living room into the hallway. So that might be one to watch. And there's also one at the bottom of the staircase that you might duck under. And what we've done is we've done some really nice wadding, in those two places to make sure that if you hit your head, it won't be something terrible. These are made from very firm, grade foam, and then the foam is covered in wadding. The wadding is covered in genuine leather to suit the cottage, and the edges are trimmed with upholstery pins. And there is a nice little brass sign saying, "Mind your head."
When I stayed next door, uh, quite a few times in the middle of the night when I would go to the loo, I'd hit my head on one of the beams right outside the bedroom door. Like, so that's, yeah. So this is your first venture into the self-catering holiday rental business.
Yeah.
What prompted you to open it to guests rather than keep it as a private home?
I've always wanted to have a customer facing business. I've always wanted, to have that British tea shop and everyone in the white pinners and the hats. And yeah, I've just always wanted to provide a service that is more than that. It's an experience. And I've always wanted customers to be wowed and for things to exceed their expectations. So I was able to bring it to life this time. I wouldn't be able to stand on my feet all day running a cafe now. It's a bit too late for that, but it's not too late for something like this. So I can still do a job, a paid job, and just about manage to manage this beautiful little cottage. So it was a bit of a dream to do something like this. and I love interiors. And I love history. So everything just fitted together absolutely beautifully. It is my first time, although I do have a history a long, long time ago. My first career, in fact, was in hospitality. So I've done restaurant catering functions, weddings, and dinner dances and, things like that, and always loved the hospitality side of things. And this is just a little bit like that, but without having to do any cooking. So it's great.
So, you have people booked through Airbnb. What made you choose them over any other agency, and how has that experience been?
So Airbnb well, it just, I guess, word of mouth. People that you talk to say, "Oh, you should go on Airbnb. That's all I use, and that keeps me busy," sort of thing. So we used Airbnb initially just to dip our toe into the water. And it's certainly drawn customers in. I would say also that they're very responsive if you have questions, or a problem of any kind with the technology. They have always been very responsive. I've had good service from Airbnb.
So, for people who may have never stayed in somebody's cottage like this before, what are some tips or advice you would give them for staying in a historic place?
Well, I would say if your host is a good host, you won't have to worry really about anything, because we know, what to do in what kind of weather. So we have a summer duvet on now. We also work through spring, autumn, winter, etc. So we have everything around where we can kind of help you adjust the temperature and be comfortable at night as well, and fans and so on, should you need it. But I think most of the people who come here are interested in the history of the cottage. They're not just necessarily looking for a cheap weekend away or an expensive weekend away, depending on how you look at it. And some people who just looked at the picture and thought it was nice, but didn't really register the history at all, are just really, really delighted when they see inside that they weren't expecting something quite so historic, and how it's nicer than the photos. Everyone says it's just like the photos, but it's nicer. You just can't really, no photograph can really do anything totally justice. I guess the things you need to bear in mind are the hill. So if you're going to stay here, you're going to have to walk up that hill. Um, it's quite a steep hill, but the great thing is you can take as long as you want. There's a handrail and there's loads of benches on the way up, and we're only about halfway down. So you haven't got to walk right from the bottom to the top. So you've got that. And what else? It's not, we've never experienced it to be slippy, by the way. I know you've been here 12 times, so correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't experienced it being slippy. You tend to find that greenstone is feels a little bit like sandpaper. It's quite gritty. So we've always found the cobbles okay to walk on, and you can walk across where there is a quite nicely surfaced footpath to just under the Abbey wall. So just cross over to the other side, and there's a pedestrian footpath with a handrail. What else might you want to bear in mind? Well, we've kind of done everything for you. We have a beautiful place outside for you to sit. It's got very comfy cushions on wicker garden furniture. There is some shade by way of a parasol, and we have installed a pergola now where we're growing the wisteria over the top. There is a beautiful view through the fence panel that we have cut out, specifically positioned the fencing to give that angle where you can see the beautiful view over the Blackmore Vale, framed by this window, if you like, with some restored shutters. In fact, I don't know that they are restored particularly. They are original shutters from somewhere in Dorset. They came from a Dorset reclamation yard, so it's very fitting. So that it really is like a window. And if you wanted to, you could shut those windows as well, shut the shutters as well. So yeah, the outside space is lovely. We provide blankets. And the cushions that I mentioned that go on the furniture, as well as scatter cushions out there, people are generally quite keen to have that experience of sitting there and just completely relax, looking at the view. So I do have people who make their coffee in the pod coffee machine that's provided, and perhaps take a croissant as well and go out there, pop a blanket round them if it's not summer or if it's just inclement weather, and just enjoy the view and just relax out there. In fact, a few of the reviews say, I wish I'd stayed longer because I needed longer in the garden.
So the most important question I'm going to ask is, what tea do you keep in the kitchen?
What tea? Really? So I generally provide English tea. So the kitchen is equipped with the essentials for you. So you'll find English tea. At the moment, I have organic Clipper tea bags. I'm very fond of Earl Grey tea, so there's always the option of Earl Grey tea. If you require something, I'll make it part of your welcome pack. So if you're a green tea drinker, as some people are, that's the sort of thing I can get in. So that's the tea. The coffee pod machine is Lavazza coffee, which I believe is an Italian coffee. I had some Italian customers who said that's the best coffee ever. They enjoyed it. We provide sugar. There are some sweeteners should you forget yours. And I always start people off with some milk. And if there's something you want, what I always try and do is find out where guests are coming from and roughly when they think they're going to arrive, partly because I can welcome them and show them how to work a few things to save them looking that up, especially if it's in the evening and actually all they want to do is go out and eat, or maybe they've had a really long flight and they just want to get to bed. It's probably nicer for them if I show them, this is what you do. I've got the heating on this for you. If you want it off, this is what you do, and just run through a few quick things with them. People seem to appreciate that. So that's how we like to look after our guests, if that's what suits them. I provide some biscuits. I used to provide more breakfast stuff, but I found that people didn't. Everyone's tastes are so different. So you can have Dorset cereals, but people don't have cereal. You can have bread, but people are gluten free. You can get the wrong type of milk. A lot of people are on plant-based milk now. So I prefer to keep that to a minimum. And you tell me, actually, when I arrive, would you mind getting me oat milk? I'll have it for you absolutely ready because I want you to be able to come in, sit down, have a cup of tea and a biscuit. Then we also provide a gift, and that's quite seasonal. So at the moment, I'm doing Prosecco and Dorset apple cake because it's a tradition in Dorset. But in the winter, it might be red wine and local cheese. Just something that is a gift from us to you. It's not part of your kind of standard essentials pack. It's something a bit nicer, a bit special, and something to get you to start embracing your experience. And there's also toiletries, Jonathan. So there's essentials again in the bathroom, shower gel, hand wash, shampoo, conditioner, so that people can travel lighter if they want to. There's laundry facilities here as well. So if you're on a long trip, going to several places, you know that when you come here, you're going to be able to do your laundry. It's like home from home, really. There's nothing else that I can think of that should be here. And everyone says it has everything. They can't think of anything. But our last guest from America that just left this morning actually said, hmm, the one thing actually would be a cat. Now, if I could have a cat while I'm here, that would be the icing on the cake.
Well, that all sounds wonderful. And so the big announcement is that Mrs. Anglotopia and I are coming to stay at Button Cottage in February. And this is an announcement I've been super excited to make. This is this is a return to Gold Hill, which is a place that has changed my life and is really why Anglotopia even exists. So what does it mean to you to welcome guests who have a deep connection to Gold Hill?
I'm almost as emotional as they are. Honestly, so many people feel the history. They see it as a quintessentially English place to see, to be, to drink in. I just feel really proud actually of what we've done here, and I feel really satisfied, fulfilled, in fact, myself, to be able to offer that kind of experience and that kind of stay for people. So yeah, I'm just absolutely over the moon, with every guest that comes and every guest that loves it. And certainly people who've waited some time to be able to come here. It's a really big deal. It's as big a deal for me to get it right for them as it is for them to come. And I want to make arrivals smooth as well. So I usually ask people, is it train or car? Do you need any help organizing a taxi? Can I get your taxi organized for you on your return journey? Just little things that take some of that stress away, so that when you arrive here, hopefully you're starting to kind of de-stress, and then you walk through the door and you're going to get a cup of tea straight away, or a coffee, or maybe you asked for a cake. Just tell me, what you want. Sometimes when people are traveling on a flight and they have very particular things. So I have a customer who wanted honey on muesli in the morning. So little things like that are going to set you up for the night you arrive and the next morning. So you don't have to worry about grocery shopping. If you just let me know, I will get a few things ready for you.
Well, I can't wait. I'm literally counting down the days. So, what a wonderful conversation this has been, and what a special episode to record. Thank you for joining us on the Anglotopia podcast, Melanie, and thank you for giving Mrs. Anglotopia and I the chance to finally return to Gold Hill and stay there. If you want to experience Button Cottage for yourself, you can find all the details at buttoncottage.co.uk, and bookings are handled through Airbnb. The links for both will be in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, or I'm gonna do this again. Sorry. What a wonderful conversation this has been, and what a wonderful episode to record. Thank you for joining us on the Anglotopia podcast, Melanie, and thank you for giving Mrs. Anglotopia and I a chance to finally return to Gold Hill to stay a little bit. If you want to experience Button Cottage for yourself, you can find all the details at buttoncottage.co.uk, and bookings are handled through Airbnb. And when we do go to Button Cottage next year, you, of course, will be able to follow along with us on Anglotopia and our social media channels. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Anglotopia podcast, please subscribe, like, comment. And if you like the Anglotopia podcast, please consider joining the Friends of Anglotopia Club, where you can get early access to new episodes and connect with other Britain enthusiasts. So join us next time as we continue exploring the people, places, and stories that make Britain's cultural heritage so endlessly fascinating to discover. Thank you, Melanie.
Thanks, Jonathan.